Greetings and welcome back to Let's Get Started as Japan in Victoria 3. This will be, after some reflection, the final episode of this series, barring, of course, some huge demand that I continue it as more of a Let's Play. The reason I reached this decision was that in between recording, I looked at what I had to do here and realized that also within the game, there were a lot of decisions to be made, and that these decisions were very strategic, high-level decisions that determine the rest of your gameplay. Also, we're almost a great power. With just a bit more prestige, which will happen pretty naturally probably within a year or two, we'll be at a great power rank, and that kind of concludes where you can say that it's a Let's Get Started guide. So let's assess the situation and what your options are going forward. I'm going to kind of go across the screen and try to hit everything. The episode will still be pretty short regardless. But I'll start with the broad strategic landscape and lay out your 3 or 4 options that you have. Because each of these comes with an opportunity cost in that you're not focusing on the other choices. Option number 1 is to really focus down on hyper-industrialization of your country. As I mentioned, you've got decent construction here, but you definitely have to build at least 5 more construction sectors to properly deplete your investment pool when you pause your government construction. And this can go much further. If I were you, I would push this up even to 300. 5 will push you up to about 200. If you push it up to 300, you'll have to, of course, build some supporting industries as well. But this would put you in a good position for hyper-industrialization of your country. That would be beneficial because then you could also start focusing on supplying some of your domestic needs to get your population a little bit higher in their standard of living, and we care about that because they'll spend more money if they have a higher standard of living. So that would entail bringing up your clothing industry a bit, your grocery industry, which you can see demand is quite accelerating there, and supporting your furniture company that you established, which isn't doing great right now, but that's also because we haven't privatized a lot of stuff that they would probably like to buy, such as the new furniture factories that we just built in Kanto and Chugoko. So do stay on top of that, of course. We've been doing pretty well, but there's always a gap from time to time where you neglect it. You may also want to help bring down some of their input goods costs just to encourage them a little bit more. Wood is very cheap and we're actually exporting quite a bit of it, so they should be building furniture pretty well. But lead is very beneficial for you to build because then they'll get on those glass factories pretty quickly. So that's your hyper-industrialization approach. The other approach is to drill down a little bit more on your education. And by a little bit more, I mean a lot more. We're not doing bad, of course. We do have universities and our innovation is, okay, but not high enough at this point of the game for Japan. Were I to continue on a innovation-centric approach, I would slap down at least 18 universities, and preferably 28. And then further boost my paper industry to help support that, of course. But that as well is low on the prices right now, so bringing it up by building more universities would actually be pretty good. Naturally, this is not totally mutually exclusive from the first approach, but there is going to be a great degree of emphasis that entails doing less in the other area. Your third approach is to start looking outward. There's lots of opportunities I notice, and this was actually one of the main things that drove me to make this decision. Qing in particular is looking vulnerable. It doesn't have any friends. That's normal, but Russia will also be quite willing to join us if we declare for a little bit of land. Here you can see Russia is quite ready to help us out in exchange for either an obligation or some of their cores back that they have here. Well, you can tell I play a bit of EU4 with that terminology. There are lots of options for your expansion. It's always nice to grab these areas in Manchuria because first, they are great states. I especially like this one, Jilin, because it has quite a good spread of resources and gold, though the population is rather low. And of course, if you grab Shenzhen, you can establish the Manchurian Railway Company. It's a great company, and it would be a choice that you would have to make, because it does actually have some overlap with some of the other companies that you're establishing. In particular, coal and other goods. I don't see it at the top. We'd have to scroll a lot in order to find it. I do not see it at the moment. Maybe it's not giving it as an option. Anyways, look into it in your own time. That would be a decision you would have to make. I'm relatively comfortable with the choices we made on companies, the Glass Company, Mitsuyo, and Mitsubishi. But of course, there's always opportunities for your fourth and your fifth company. When you're grabbing that, you could grab this for about 25 infamy, a little bit more, and be well set up for expansion in the future. Or instead, you could grab Joseon as a subject. You can't really take it as the land directly right now because it would be too expensive. But not really. It would still be under the 50 infamy cap that most people like to stick under. I tend to like them as a subject because they make a great second partner when you're establishing a power block, which is certainly something you would want to consider once you hit great power rank. With Joseon in your power block and maybe one or two other partners, such as the Philippines getting transferred over from Spain, or Formosa, which I like to occasionally grab from Qing and then release, that makes a very solid first 4 members for a power block, so your mandate growth will be quite quick. That would be quite high on the infamy though, and I would prefer to avoid it. You definitely can't do all of them. In addition, Joseon is currently unloyal to Qing, and they would be unloyal to you at the start as well. At least not without some major investments to make them economically dependent upon you. And that would take a few years in which somebody else, such as a envious Russia or an envious Great Britain, might decide that they want to support their independence. Treaty ports are always an option as well with Qing, as is opening their market. Given that if you declared war on them, they would never like you again, I would go with the treaty port because you're not going to get investment rights anytime soon. Should you prefer to start expanding in Southeast Asia, you could have them transfer Lanfang and expand into this area. Eventually the Dutch East Indies will probably want independence, and then you could eat up all the little pieces. Best to do this sooner rather than later because the British have already got a few subjects down here, even if they're presently revolting, and you don't want them to eat the rest before you get around to it. Kutai has actually been vassalized by the Portuguese, and the Portuguese even ate Gaza, which is actually pretty rare for them. They tend to be pretty unambitious sometimes. Of course, lots of valuable resources down here, rubber, oil, and gold. Borneo does tend to be a bit underpopulated in my opinion. Nonetheless, I do usually keep them as a subject for quite some time, and only annex them later, then hope I can get some Japanese migration down there. Lastly, you do of course also have the option of going a bit further afield. Zanzibar is free right now, and easy for the taking. Were you to have earlier gotten, or later get, colonial exploitation, this can help you secure all of Eastern Africa. Though at present Zanzibar has claims up here, so you would actually have to annex them fully for those claims to go away, otherwise you can't colonize Kenya. Later on, if you accidentally take this land from Oman, they're also going to get claims on Kenya, so maybe you want to put that off. I feel it's beneficial sometimes to expand a little bit further here, or to get allies that might require your assistance in wars, such as Egypt or Persia, because that encourages you to build up your convoys. You're going to need them eventually, you're going to need a couple thousand, and it's better to have the pressure to build them sooner, because ports take a while to get up, and it's not something you want to find yourself suddenly needing, like, oh no, I need to deploy an army far away for a very important war, and then just not having the convoys to supply that army. That concludes our foreign adventures outlined for the moment. Let's talk a little bit about our other domestic situations. Here you also are going to have a lot of options pretty soon. As I noted earlier, the power distribution is quite favorable to switching groups in and out in order to pass whichever laws you need to get through. In particular, laws of importance, of course, are getting a professional army, and using that, of course, to placate the samurai while you pass something that they like a little bit less. In a little bit, we're going to unlock Central Archives. That's actually going to open up the opportunity for you to possibly pursue a technocracy. This has gotten very popular because of the free company charter and the free company you get when you use it. It is hard to pass. The shogunate's probably not going to rebel because they're still getting their debuffs from the end of isolationism, and as long as you placate the samurai with professional army, they won't object too much either. But even once you've passed it, it's a pretty unpopular form of government, and you'll have a lot of issues with unhappy people. interest groups, and with radicals. But you can make it stable in time. I have. It's a pretty fun playthrough, and you should try it at least once one day. It's lovely to have that extra company. You will notice, though, that if you have an extra company, you can burn through your investment pool pretty quickly when all 3 or 4, that one extra company that you'll always have, when they're all prosperous, they will really eat through your investment pool quite quickly. Paradox balanced it quite well, actually, in that regard, with how they space out the companies in the different places of the tech tree. Naturally, you can go the more conservative route and jump down to wealth voting. That'll fly through with no problems. Other laws you're going to want to prioritize are trying to get off subjecthood. And were I to continue playing, I would probably actually do this next. Because right now, the intelligentsia is incredibly strong. They're the strongest group in the country even. And were I to focus on education, which is also probably what I would do, me being more of an isolationist and an insular person, would make them even stronger. Getting on cultural exclusion is great because you can get in some mass migration events from some of the Asian countries, most particularly Korea, which doesn't have closed borders at this point in the game. China, not so much, but maybe eventually. The other law that you're going to want to try to get off of, but opportunities don't come along very often, is the guild system. I always like to go straight to right to associate when I can do this, because if you get any support in these sectors, you're very likely to get some that comes in here as well. And early game, the industrialists tend to have leaders who object to this a little bit less than they will later in the game when they have all these laissez-faire capitalists. It's not always possible though, so just do your best and try to get one of these if you can. Finally, of course you're going to want to get off agrarianism, but that will happen naturally when the movement to support it is a little bit stronger. As promised, I'll kind of work down the list here. Budgetarily, we are doing splendidly, and it's only going to get better. You're never going to have financial worries again at this point, in my view. You might have investment pool worries when you move to steel frames, but you'll deal with that when it arrives. Buildings are pretty well rounded, but we have failed to upgrade some of them completely. Glassworks, you can see, are paper mills, but we are still working on that. Shipyards, we could use some more clippers. Driving down the price will encourage the fish industry after all. And we haven't even started with fertilizers. It's good to get that up and running as soon as you can though, so that when percussion caps finally unlock, you can get upgraded pretty quickly at the direction of skirmish infantry. Our military is quite weak right now, which of course is why it is an important choice which strategic direction you want to take in the big picture. Were you to go into China with Russia, this would be just fine, of course, but that's going to aggravate quite a few people, and so you're going to probably want to double the size of your military. I would do this first with artillery, lining out at least 2 of the 3 corps there of the armies with a full stack of 30 artillery to complement the 30 infantry. The last army I like to leave as a rapid reaction force or a expeditionary force to go take care of little wars. I even give them some cavalry in the spirit of the old days. Don't forget to upgrade your mobilization before you get into any wars as well. You may wonder why I was so hesitant to recruit an admiral here, and the reason is I'm only going to recruit 1, at least until he is fully capped out on his promotions to a Grand Admiral rank. I believe that is 110 ships. Thus, the admiral will really support their group quite a bit. The reason for this is just the way that naval battles work. It's better to have 1 admiral, whereas with armies, it's often better to have actually several generals in any given army. Thus, I would automatically here have to select the intelligentsia leader, even though they're not that good. I might even be willing to take some risks here and recruit 1 and then dismiss them, as long as my people are happy enough, just to get somebody who's a little bit better. You would want your admiral to either be intelligentsia or industrialist, unless you're hoping to do something really weird with a samurai. For the power block, Japan can do lots of things. I've always been a fan just of going to classic trade league for Japan. It's a great trading nation. We already have free trade. Why not make it even better? Sovereign Empire I find just comes too late in the game, and I also find it a bit ridiculous of a power block. What kind of nation would possibly volunteer to join a sovereign empire? Additionally, we're just not going to have that many subjects, I think, unless we create a bunch of micro-subjects, which aren't that beneficial in my view. Ideological union can be something that you take actually right away, and you can even disband it later. It gives you some nice bonuses to enactment time and to stall chance that you can utilize and then ditch. It's also just a little bit fun of a playthrough though with ideological union. There are lots of unique things you can do with their statute to boost your different interest groups based on which state they're the strongest in. Military treaty I wish was more valuable, but it's not. And religious will not be useful for Japan unless you really want to do a role-playing run. After the restoration is complete, you could go Shinto, take religious, and just go converting everybody. You're not going to have many friends, but it still might be entertaining. For principles, you can find other guides on which to choose there. I have my own preferences. Companies, of course, are important. Transportation is always nice. And I find then that companies, transportation, and food standardization. The others are good, of course, many of them, but not as good for Japan, such as advanced research, which is something that you're going to not need later in the game. Of course, you can always take them and ditch them later, if you think your mandate growth will be enough. We've talked about your wars and your diplomatic situation, and if you go to war, you'll desperately want to find a friend pretty quickly. We'll see how this situation over here pans out, and maybe then we can choose somebody that we want to ally with, who's a little bit stronger than the Netherlands. I do kind of wish I could have helped them out though. I often like aligning myself with small powers, especially Persia, it's one of my favorites, and becoming their best friend, and then getting investment rights and using that as a little mini game where after having developed my country, I develop theirs. It allows you to go through the construction loop all over again, building up iron and cloth and wood, and trying to push them into the modern era. We haven't looked at our society and our population much, and I won't cover it here. Japan's so homogeneous, but do pay attention, of course, especially to your population. It's important to keep an eye on what the needs are and where they're spending all of their money. We can see transportation is really hitting the upper class hard. That's natural, we haven't even developed trains yet. But groceries are hitting everybody, so we definitely would have to get on top of that. Looking back, I'm kind of wishing I had set up a grocery company. The furniture just isn't kicking it yet, but it probably will within the next 5 or 10 years, about the time we want to disband it. And that would come around probably because within about, I would say, 7 years, we'll probably get the restoration. That'll time out almost perfectly for 1867 and getting the industrialist leader. If you get too close to the honorable restoration and you haven't hit January 1st of 1867, I would try to find an illegitimate government to pop in for a while, take the legitimacy hit, and pause the restoration that way. Just make sure, remember, don't put the landlords back in power. That concludes going down this side, and this side we don't really need to talk much about. You do want to, of course, even if you're not going the education institution route for your grand strategy, try to get up the Terracotta system as quickly as you can. You're going to get military research as well, so that will help you there. We're not quite there yet though, because we didn't really get lucky on our tech spreads here. We're getting the spread of quinine, so kind of wish we had actually went the colonial route there. With that, I think we can wrap up. Thank you for joining me for this series, and, as I said, if there is popular demand, or if I get incredibly bored, which is possible these days, winter is coming after all, and I'll be less often out in nature, then maybe I shall continue this as a Let's Play. In that case, give me your recommendation on what kind of strategic direction you would prefer me to see, and maybe I'll listen. Maybe. I hope you did learn something valuable through this series. Some of the episodes were a bit long, and I'll try to get over that in time in next series for next countries, though I must admit I'm probably not as good at any other country as I am at Japan. With that, I wish you all the best luck with your own playthroughs. I hope you have as good of luck as we had in this run, which has seen pretty good growth and not many disruptions to our domestic situation. Until next time then, take care of yourselves, and I wish you all the best. Ciao.